The Curves tool, while a bit harder to wrap your head around, offers a degree of precision and control that is unrivaled in Photoshop. Let's start with a new image. Control-O on the PC, Command-O on the Mac to open. In our Chapter 3 folder, we are going to open the image titled Curves. Now this is going to open up by default in our standard screen view. Let's go up to the Applications bar, and we're going to select Full Screen Mode with Menu Bar. We could also use our handy shortcut F key to do this. Now we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, and Curves. And this is why we switch the screen mode. Over the image, I'm going to press the space bar to invoke the hand key. You remember that from lesson 2, right? We're going to move this over here so that we can see both the image and the curves dialog box at the same time. Now there's an option here I want you to set in Curve Display Options. I want you to click and open that up. Drag this box up to the top. Under Show, I'd like for you to turn off the check mark for intersection line. We don't want to really confuse ourselves with too many things to look at one time, but do make sure that under Show Amount Of, you have the radio button set for light. This will give us our 0 to 255 numbers that we've been talking about all along. So we can close this options box now. In the Curves dialog window, first thing you're likely to notice is that we have a histogram behind it. So this should look very familiar to us. We have a triangle on the left and one on the right. Again, very similar to what we saw in the Levels tool. And Curves is oriented in the same way. Shadows are on the far left, highlights are on the far right. Every curve starts with a diagonal line that represents no change to the image. Now let's see how this tool works. We're going to go click on the On Image Adjustment tool. That's this finger hand icon with the up and down arrows. We're going to click on it to select it. And as I hover the mouse around the image, I'm not clicking, I'm not dragging, I'm simply hovering over the image. Note that in the main window of the Curves dialog, we have a hollow circle that is moving along that diagonal line. That hollow circle represents the brightness value of the pixel located directly underneath my cursor. So as I'm moving up in here in the clouds, you can see that that hollow circle is to the right side towards the highlights. But if I move my cursor down into these shadow areas, you can see that hollow circle now has drifted down to the left end of the histogram. So here we're focusing on shadow pixels. If I move it up here, we're focusing on highlights. So it's very important to note that this is a live update and will continuously track where you're moving the mouse. When we want to edit the image, we simply click, and notice that when we click on the image area, we have this hand icon with the up and down arrows, but in the Curves dialog box, that hollow circle has now turned into a solid black square. That means that point is selected, and if we drag up with the mouse, we're holding the mouse down and dragging up, we are brightening the image, and look at what happens to our curve. Now, in the Curves window, we have changed the shape of this curve. We have raised it up above where this original diagonal line was. Whenever the curve goes above the line, those pixels are being brightened, and you can see that we brightened the image. If I were to go and drag this curve down, and as you can see, I can simply click to select a point, drag this down, the image gets darker. Look at the shape of the curve. It's now fallen below the diagonal line. I want you to pay attention too between the distance from the original diagonal to where we have made our new curve shape. Up in the highlights, you can see that the curve has bent below the original line, but by a relatively small amount. There's not so much of a difference up here between our new curve and the original. Whereas you can see as we get down into the midtones, and especially down around in this region, we have a much greater amount of space, which means a much greater change in brightness. In this case, a change in darkness. So that's how we work with the Curves tool. We simply use this On Image tool. We cycle it over a part of the image. We can see that hollow circle, and we click up or down to brighten or darken the image. Now, if that's all we could do to curves, it wouldn't really be that much more useful than levels. But the fantastic thing about the Curves tool is that we can select and move multiple points. I'm going to go here, click on this point, and I'm going to drag it out of the window area to delete it. With our On Image tool selected, we're going to go up in the Clouds area. And I'm going to take a cloud area here. Notice my hollow circle is over in the highlight range. I'm going to click and drag up a little bit. That looks pretty good. Of course, the whole image is brightened now, but here's where the magic of curves comes into play. I can go down here into my shadow areas. I'm way down to the left end of the curve dialog window. I'm going to click and drag down. Down a little bit more, right about there. Now notice what has happened. In the shadow region, I have pulled my curve down below the original diagonal, so those pixels have gotten darker, while in my highlight end, my curve is above the original diagonal, meaning those pixels have gotten brighter. So I've done two separate things to the image. The bright pixels I've made brighter, and the dark pixels I have made darker. And notice the shape of our curve. It's fairly shallow, but it's still an S shape. I could enhance it a little bit more. I'll click here, open this up a bit, and maybe click down here and pull those shadows down a little bit so you could really see it look like an S shape. This will be a very familiar shape to you as you work with images in Photoshop, because this is the way to enhance contrast, to add contrast to an image. An S-shaped curve means that your highlights have gotten brighter and your shadows have gotten darker. What we've done so far is taken a few minutes of explanation, but in actual practice we're really looking at just a few seconds of work. Let's take a look at the preview by toggling it on and off to see just how far we've come. If I uncheck preview, here's where we started, a flat, low contrast, uninteresting, dull image. With just 2 points on the curve, however, we quickly go to a much fuller, richer, and dynamic image. And that's part of the beauty of working with the Curves tool.